This is a video on authentic assessment, sometimes called direct assessment or more direct assessment. It's called direct assessment because we try, to the greatest extent possible, to measure or document skills as they are applied in the real world. Authentic. That's why it is more authentic. We try to measure how students actually use knowledge and skills in a way they will use it in the real world. Authentic assessment is opposed to inauthentic assessment, fake assessment, or standardized tests. It's a direct assessment, again, because you are directly measuring their ability to use a skill in an authentic product or performance, or more directly. Okay? It occurs over time versus a snapshot. Like real life, we measure progress occurs over time. Now, a standardized test is like a snapshot. It happens at one instance in time. Authentic assessment, we take little bits, little measures, samples over time. We are, like I said, a scientist collecting soil samples. You don't dig up the whole lawn, you collect little bits in different places of the lawn. Little bits, samples over time to show change or to show growth. Also, we are like the blind man looking at the elephant or feeling the elephant. We use multiple data sources. Not just a standardized test, that's one data source, and there's nothing wrong with a standardized test, criterion, or norm reference test. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Nothing whatsoever, as long as we use multiple data sources, multiple types of data. If I use actual products or performances or checklists or rubrics or some of the things that we'll talk about. All right, some forms of authentic assessment is the checklist. The checklist lists the specific attributes that you're looking for, such as behaviors, traits, or skills, and the attribute is either checked off or a level of performance indicated. And you'll see it just like that. That's what I'm looking for. Boop! And it's either checked off, it is there, or a level of performance indicated. All right? You can have your student checklist where they rate and describe their own performance, and you want these checklists to inform your teaching. That is, the attributes listed, the onus is on you to make sure that you teach them. So that, in a way, informs your teaching. You have to say, okay, exactly what am I looking for in this writing assignment? Okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need to teach specifically. So any type of assessment is assessing you as a teacher as well as students. All right. An open-ended student checklist documenting quantity. Here, tally marks are used to indicate the quantity of something occurring over time. For example, this would be a weekly checklist, working in small groups or some such thing. They would tally every time they did one of these things in small group. It can be done with a small group. This could be in a small cooperative group, they're working together and they tally every time they do one of these things, or an individual. These can be put in a portfolio to show change over time, and this is a weekly checklist. So if they have a student portfolio, one for every week is placed in that portfolio. Could be a portfolio for the group or the individual. There are open-ended spaces. I love open-ended spaces, where it gives students a space to go beyond, to tell you what they have actually learned. This allows for a variety of responses, things maybe that you had not imagined or encountered, interesting things I learned. That's the thing, if you define the learning experience too much, if you define what must be, you eliminate what might be. And some of the most interesting and memorable things occur outside your narrowly defined lesson plan. That's why I like open-endedness. Skills I need help with. And again, students know, ask them. This should inform your teaching. As I said, a checklist informs me how I'm doing. Am I teaching these skills? And it informs me in that I need to teach these ahead of time. That is the open-ended checklist. Another type of open-ended checklist is you have the skills, you've taught each one of them, and you simply ask the student to explain how they use each of these skills. If they cannot write, of course this is dictated, but that gives me a much better sense of how they're processing and using these skills. Open-ended checklist. Teacher checklist. These have the skills covered and when they are covered. Designed to indicate exactly what skills you introduced and exactly when students have mastered the skill. And again, this shows change over time. Now, this would be for an individual student. Ideally, you have a 3-ring binder with something like this for each student. I could have a checklist like this for math, for language arts, for literacy class, whatever. And I have the skills that I'm looking for. It could be the scope and sequence chart, or if you go to the Minnesota Department of Education, the Minnesota guidelines are there. It has the scope and sequence for every possible subject. As I am observing students or observing their work or their homework or whatever, I can simply rate when things are mastered and demonstrated competency. I could use a checklist of some sort to indicate when. What and when. All right, the rating checklist. Again, you specify the trait and then you assign a level of performance. There is a rating checklist. Here is the skill. Again, a level of performance. I like this because it is like a rubric without the lengthy description. Rubrics, as you see, can become cumbersome. This is more pragmatic for quickly getting a sense of the student's level of skill and change over time. Is this 100% accurate, reliable, and valid? No, no one measure is. That's why we use a variety of measures. Now, standardized tests give the illusion of validity. Validity does the thing measure what it purports to measure, but that is an illusion. Authentic assessment is a more valid measure. I like students to be able to assess their own work, comments by either the teacher or the student. Student products and performances usually go in a portfolio, and you include work samples to show growth over time, and these different samples are the best way to show how students' skills and knowledge have changed over time. Like I said before, you want to include representative samples in a portfolio. You do not include everything. If it's a writing class, students get to select their best work. If it's a reading class and you are doing fluency scores, you don't include every single fluency measure. You include fluency scores over time. Also, you want to encourage students to analyze and evaluate their work. Students who do this, who evaluate and assess their own work, become more critical and skillful practitioners, just as teachers who evaluate their own work become more critical and skillful practitioners. That's that reflection bit we've talked about. Here is a product and performance assessment form, a generic form just to give you an idea. This is used to rate science projects or other things. And again, adopt and adapt. Here are the traits I'm looking for in some sort of rating skill. All right, I'm going to end here, and the next one I will show you some more examples.